What's up, everybody? Chris Bazzy here, and today we're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about why it's important and why you should care. Now, disclaimer, I'm not an expert when it comes to branding. When it comes to logo design and picking out the fonts and pairing them together and colors, I'm not an expert on that. But there are others out there who are. They know what to do. They know how to take colors and fonts and shapes and put them together to make them into something beautiful. Speaking of people who know how to do that, I have a friend, a very, very good close friend of mine, who's going to help explain this world of branding and how we can do it, how we can put the pieces together, the steps we need to take, and the concepts to help you guys understand why branding is important. His name is Jacob, and his brand is 14.design. I'll have all the social media down below. You can go check him out. And he's a graphic designer, he's a marketing major, and I like to consider him a branding expert. Any questions that I have, I go to him. It helps because, we pretty much live in the same town. But he has a lot of good stuff to say, and I'm very excited for him to be able to share his heart and his passion about it. So let's get right into it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacob. I'm 14 Design. That's my personal brand, and I'm a graphic designer here in Wichita and a good friend of Chris's. So today we're going to talk about how to build a brand. Whether you're a freelancer, you need to build a brand for yourself, or you're a graphic designer and you're building brands for companies, whatever it is, these are going to be some basic steps, kind of a list of things for you to know when you're building a brand. So with that said, we're going to jump into a brand. The first thing we need to really talk about is what is a brand and why is it important? And branding is more than just like a name and a logo that distinguishes you in a marketplace filled with competitors. Your brand is the way people perceive you. And that includes both impressions you control and impressions that you can't control. What does that mean exactly? Well, the brand is the first thing that comes to mind when somebody hears your company name or sees your visual. It's an entire persona, like a person. It's what you think about when you think about Coca-Cola. It's happiness, So they've created an entire brand around this word of happiness. It's a personality for you or for your business, whether you're a freelancer or a business. And that's really important to understand because there's a lot of things when you're designing a logo, when you're designing colors, when you're picking out your fonts, your artwork, that go into the personality of your brand. So what you need to do is you just need to be aware that you're building a personality. Okay, so starting out with your brand, I'm gonna assume that you've done your research. But if you haven't, you need to back up, start with research. Find out who your customer is, build a customer profile of who you're trying to reach, look at competitors, what are they doing, figure out what you're trying to do with your brand. Just to prove my point a little bit, if you have not researched anything, here's a mistake that I made. So I'm an entrepreneur myself, as well as a graphic designer, and I started a company with a friend of mine, and we were selling vanilla extract. I did it at farmers markets. Sounds like a good idea. Well, here you can see this is the logo we created. Our company was called Extracted. Our logo was an E. We did not research our customer base. And if you know anything about farmers markets, it's moms and families. And we came up with a really sleek, modern, professional looking brand, and it didn't work. Our colors were blue and white and gray. The logo work, as you can see here, was very modern looking, and I believe this is one of the reasons our business failed. We just never were able to establish any brand presence because it didn't resonate with the people we were trying to reach. So we didn't research. Don't make the same mistake. Research your target and do what works for them. Step number one, that's decide on your personality. You're like, wait, hold up. What about the logo? What about the colors? We'll get there. First things first, your personality. What do you want people to feel when they think about your brand? See, brands have personalities, designs have feelings. Just like music can make you feel things, they can be soft or fast or energetic, same with design. And every graphic designer knows that. So you need to decide what your personality is for your brand, and then tell your graphic designer this is my personality. This is what we're trying to do before you start with a logo or anything else. So you've got your business name, you gotta decide on your brand personality. One thing that I suggest to clients is pick 3 words as if you're describing a person and say that this is what my brand is. So that could be classy or snarky or retro or funny. Whatever your brand is, pick 3 words that describe it. Tell your designer that. Tell your designer, I want my brand personality to be this. That'll help them because the designer knows how to make the design feel like something. That's their whole job. So they're going to elevate your brand by knowing ahead of time what you're looking for in a brand. This is why I recommend never creating a logo yourself or creating a logo on the internet. Like there's tons of free websites that are like, download a free logo. Don't do it, stay away from it. Those logos already have a personality associated with them and it's not your personality. It's something else, something random, and you don't want to get attached to that. And if you're not a designer, you don't know how to create feelings with design. I'm sorry, it's just true. You just don't. So get a designer to design your logo. Make it a personality that's going to look professional. It's going to be able to carry you into the future. I see so many small businesses and startups, and they're like, well, I just did this logo myself, and I'll get rebranded down the road when I have some money. Don't waste your time. You're shooting yourself in the foot. A bad brand will communicate unprofessionalism. It communicates small business. You don't want that. You want to be sleek and professional, and you want to look like educated, and you want to look like an expert in your field. A designer is going to be able to do that for you. You're not going to be able to do that for yourself. Don't hire your high school nephew who says he's a graphic designer but isn't. Just go cough up the money for a good designer who can put personality into your brand. You'll be leagues ahead of everybody else. So on the subject of brand personality, I just want to show you a quick example of a client that I worked with about a year ago. Their name is Arc80s, and they build custom arcade cabinets, like the 80s kind, like the retro Donkey Kong arcade cabinets, that sort of thing. And when the owner of the business came to me, he actually told me right away what his personality was. He said, hey, we're looking for something that's modern and kind of classy, but we want an 80s feel. Like we want retro 80s in a modern day design. So I knew what I was going for, and we actually we created this logo for him. This is the Arc80s logo, and as you can see, it's got kind of like a Battlestar Galactica feel. That's a custom like font that I did for the Arc, and then 80s is just like a digital clock display font. And we were able to put this together in a way that looks very modern, but has ties to that 80s retro feel that he was looking for. And when you look at this, the bright colors communicate modern design. The type and the digital clock face really communicate that 80s vibe. And then our branding elements for the artwork, we used some similarities to Atari. We had the outer space stars, very Galactica feeling. So we were able to actually communicate with this, as you can see here. This style, this is actually a banner I made for him. This style communicates very modern retro 80s, which is a unique blend that you can actually do that in a design. But that's what I'm talking about when I say you can feel things. We used a gradient on this logo. Didn't have gradients in the 80s. It's a very modern thing to do, but the design is so 80s that it all just kind of worked together. So it's very important that you tell your designer or decide ahead of time, if you're designing for yourself, what your personality is for your brand. So that's tip number 1, decide on your brand personality. All right, so we've decided on our brand personality. We know what we're going for. Now it's time that we're gonna create a logo. Sometimes, if you're looking this up online or something, people will be like, pick your color scheme. Don't pick your color scheme yet. You wanna design your logo in black, white, and grays. Now, the reason for this is a few different things, but primarily, color can actually skew your view of the logo. So don't deal with color yet. Make your designs in black and white. You'll be able to see the true design of the logo in black and white. Then you can add your color in later. The color should always add to the personality, the feel of the logo, not be the personality of the logo. Does that make sense to you? I hope so. Because I can't explain it in the video, because you guys are watching it. So I hope that makes sense. So what else goes into logo design? So I have a couple of quick points for you. First of all, always design 3 different logos. And I mean really different logos, not just variations of the same logo. You want 3 totally different concepts, totally different ideas, because what's gonna happen is you sometimes might think, oh, I have a good idea for a logo, but after you've done a second design and you've pushed yourself to try to come up with a third concept, there's elements from those concepts that you're like, you know what? I really like that, or I really liked, the way this worked on this logo. So do 3 different concepts. Figure out what those concepts are and make them their own thing before you finalize a design, because you'll often end up pulling elements. Another tip that I always tell people is you want to make sure you invert your logo. Again, always black and white, but when you invert it, you'll be able to see any design irregularities. This is really important with a word mark. If you're just a word logo, you need to invert that, because otherwise your brain will get so caught up reading the letters, it won't see the actual design of the logo and what you're doing. And the last thing, once you've decided on your final design, this is what I want my logo to look like, you should finalize that design and be very precise. I like to design all of my logos on 3000 by 3000 artboards. That way I can nudge just a little bit and get everything exactly spaced out the way I want. The reason is you don't want to be off by a little bit of spacing, and then you blow that logo up on a billboard and that spacing becomes a lot more obvious, and this logo is going to go everywhere across all of your brand material. You don't want weird spacing things, weird little like character glitches sometimes will happen with different fonts. Make sure you're aware of those things. Zoom in, get really close, and finalize the details on that logo. So the next part of the design process for your brand is going to be then choosing your color scheme or your color palette. Colors all have emotions, and we'll link an image below that shows what different colors can make you feel, but every color has an emotion, and you want to use that to your advantage in your logo. Don't just pick orange because it's your favorite color, because you'll probably get sick of it, seeing it so much in your brand, but that's a whole nother story. Pick a color that fits with the audience that you're trying to reach. Build your color palette out so you know what colors you use and what colors you don't. And here's the thing, a color palette doesn't have to be a lot of colors. Black and white are in your color palette by default because you're going to use them everywhere, but you only need one more color. Look at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a great example of this. Their color palette is red, like red, that's it. They use the same red color on everything. They don't really have other colors that they throw in, and they do just fine. I would say they're one of the strongest brands in America. So it's clear that you don't need a slew of 10 colors in a color palette. In fact, I would keep it smaller rather than larger. If you're new to branding, if you're new to business, maybe just pick one color. That way you can keep that same color across all the platforms and everything will look the same. If you want to go a little bit more advanced, maybe 2 colors, I wouldn't go more than 3, honestly. 3 or 4, you're starting to push the bounds of having too many colors in your brand color palette. One thing that I do and I suggest to all designers is pick colors that are Pantone colors. Pantone for designers is a great way to make sure that the colors are universal across print and digital marketing. So I would recommend picking a Pantone color scheme for your color palette.
All right, we're gonna stop right there. That way it gives you guys time to be able to digest and process everything that Jacob has talked about when it comes to branding and identity. So be on the lookout for part 2 of how to build a brand, where Jacob's gonna finish everything that he's talking about with branding and just wrap this whole thing up. So stick around for it. All right, peace.